What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Art Hack. My name is Ricky. I am your host, the Art Hack. And today I'm going to be continuing a sculpting session. We're on our third session, working on the sculpture of Jesus on the cross. Heavily from references from the Shroud of Turin. Let me turn this music down a little bit. And if the music gets too annoying for my taste, then I'll probably shut it down. But I like to have a little noise going on in the background. We might even pull up some documentaries that I've been watching from. In regard to the Shroud of Turin, I find it absolutely fascinating. If you haven't checked out any of the other videos, I don't expect anyone to sit there and watch an hour and a half of me sculpting unless that's just really your thing. But I figure since I'm out here, I know I like to watch all kinds of interesting things and watch people work, so I figure why not. So last time, we worked a little bit on the beard and we worked a little bit on the hair, and what I want to do is we're going to revise this, and for a couple of reasons. In fact, I'm going to pull up some reference here real quick. So let's see. So on the shroud, they have noted that the figure in the shroud had long hair. So if you can see back here, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but this man, who many believe is the crucified Christ, his hair extended down into a ponytail. In fact, there's a better illustration of that here in this sculpture that was drawn from the same references, right? And so what we're going to do is try and mimic these things, and we'll see where that goes. We're going to try out a few techniques that are going to involve building our hair tools. If you hear some noise in the background, that's my fan and or my little cattle dog over there. Right now he's being good. Sometimes he likes to go a little crazy. It's just in his bones, you know. So here's what we're gonna do. We're going to revamp this hair a little bit. Before I get too crazy on this, though, I want to help organize myself a little bit. And I should have gone through, and I have a terrible habit of not naming things until I need to actually organize them. I'm not going to go through and do that right now, just because I'm not. And but what I am going to do is try and shut some things down so that I can see a little bit better. We are going to we're probably going to modify this crown a little bit, because according to what they found on the shroud, they had a botanist have a look at some of the things that were going on there. They've noticed that this crown of thorns that appears to be present on the shroud has some leafy structures, like some little berries. I'll have to pull up the once we get there, I'll pull up the reference of the actual plant. It's pretty gnarly the way that it looks, but on the image there is definitely an object there that appears to be leaves or something that are present there. And so they're saying that and on all the depictions of Christ throughout the centuries, especially throughout the Renaissance, they always depicted him with this little, look like a a rose branch that's been bent around. But what they actually used apparently was just something that was right there, grabbed it out of the ground, and smushed it around his head, and called it a day. Very unceremoniously. So we're going to shut that off for now, and we're going to work on the shape of this hair. So I'm going to pull from the reference that I have. I've got it over on my other monitor. You're not going to be able to see that, but so here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to try to pull these shapes into place. Just using the regular old move brush. I'm going to come down on the subdivision levels a little bit, and we're just going to pull this stuff around. No need to be too gentle with it. I'm turning on transparency just to help myself out a little bit. And so we're going to pull this down. And hair is not going to it makes you wonder if it was like hanging off to the side or how exactly this wound up. But so there's a bit that comes down like this, and then it also would have tapered. Oh, come on, tapered down a little further down the back. And I'm not worried about how this gets deformed. Because we're gonna end up dynameshing the snot out of this anyway, so that's okay. No, that's correct. My dog, he's trying to eat some foam. That's not cool. Okay. All right, so that'll do it for that. Move it over here this way a little bit, and then now we're gonna go start breaking up these pieces, and we're going to break it up a little bit, and then we're going to do a little sculpting to get some of our forms, and then we're going to use a tool to help us out. All right, so let's see. So I'm gonna bring up my subdivisions a little bit. Let's go ahead, and I like to try to be non-destructive as much as I can, if I can. So I'm going to duplicate this. And then now we're going to go through and we're going to, what happened to our music? There we go. Okay. All right. Had a bit of a phone call there for a second, so sorry for the weird silence. Okay, so I'm gonna find some different music, and if this doesn't work, I will go to something else. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to use our Dynamesh, and we're going to start breaking this stuff up. And I got to give credit to another YouTuber who did a bit of a demo on this. I'll share the link to his video as well. And this isn't anything I haven't tried before. It's just I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, I know I've done some different things in the past. What can I do to really punch this up? So I found a couple of cool references that really summarized pretty well what we're about to do. So what we need to do is we need to break this hair up into different segments to help us out. And then we're going to build a hair tool. So let me stop talking about what we're going to do and actually just get to it. So we're going to come over to our Dynamesh. And I'm just going to give it, let's give it a resolution. Let's say 200. We're not going to freeze our subdivisions. And what we're just going to do is we're going to grab our selection tool. We're going to go select lasso. And what I want to do is try and break out different clumps of hair, right? So I'm going to turn on transparency to help myself out a little bit. And even after that, sometimes it's hard to see, so I'll just go solo. So what I want to do is I want to isolate these different areas. And you can spend a lot of time like trying to finagle this. I would just, try and make quick business of it. Be mindful of the hairline. So have an idea for a hairline. So I've already kind of established some of these things, right? So hide that there. And what we're going to do is we're going to go, we're going to say subtool, and we're going to do a split. And we're going to mask this, and we're going to say split masked points. Okay? And then when we do this, then we're going to do our Dynamesh. Okay? And then we're going to just keep doing that. So I'm going to break this up into a handful of different sections. And this is going to give us some more localized control that we're going to need to really kind of work this stuff out. So I'm going to, like I did before, mask, split masked points, Dynamesh again. I'm going to, let's see, I want to be mindful of this section down here at the bottom. You know what, we're just going to work with it as it is, so I'm just going to mask this off. Split mask points, Dynamesh. Same. Don't be too precious about it. Just get to work on it. And the reason why is because you'll get bogged down with things, and this is a problem that I have. Like, I'll get started on something, and then I'll just get bogged down in like trying to get the perfect thing done right, and it's generally not the best method. So mask, unhide, split mask points, dynamesh. Okay. Let me make sure I got my reference up over here. All right. It's really all right. So I said don't be too precious about it, but sometimes you got to take a step back. So, all right, here we go. All right, because I need to make sure that I have this segment saved. So come down like that. There we go. So split mask points. Okay. Now I can go through, and yeah, that's a much better option. So, mask, points. Okay. All right. So now we need to go back through and double check all other pieces. That needs to be dynameshed. That needs to be dynameshed. Sometimes dynamesh will turn off, so you have to go back and do something. There we go. Alright, so what we're going to do now, we're going to just kind of soften this stuff up, go back and redo our dynamesh. Let's turn off solo, and I'm going to start moving these pieces around. Okay, nothing fancy. We're just going to keep moving these around, and the beauty of it is that if we need more dexterity, then we can chop something off and then keep going. So I did see I had some duplicates. I don't know that I want to keep that. Okay. All right. So we're just going to use our move brush. Kind of move this stuff around. I'm going to use a large brush because I want large movements, large sections. Okay. This will help us to layer things. Now, the demo that I watched was using a lot of was using some snake hook, which we could use. I'm not going to go down that route yet, mostly because I just don't want to. And then the cool thing is that, like, okay, let's say, all right, this is where I got with it. What am I going to do now? Temptation would be to go through and pull in a sphere or something, but we don't really got to do that. I'm just going to use my transpose, control move, and here I've got a whole other piece, right? Same thing like I did before. Now these are both part of the same subtool now, but I can split that out, no problem. All right. Always be moving around your model so that you can see what effects you're having. You know, you push something around and then all of a sudden you wind up like I did just there, where he went from having hair a certain way to looking like he's got a big old lump under his head. Reverse the mask, invert it, and then pull this around. Okay. I'm gonna add some waviness to it. Okay. Maybe not quite that harsh. I do want to have some movement in this hair. I want this to come down a little bit further because the reference is showing hair. You also have to think about gravity a little bit. Trust me, all sculptures look this terrible. You just gotta keep working with it. It's part of the fun and part of the annoyance. Like if something's not working out, just keep going. Okay. Like right now, I'm having a hard time finding the shape here, but I'll find it. It's just, you just gotta fight with it sometimes. Soften it up. I think. All right, I'm gonna leave it right there. Sometimes you just have to do that. Let it be. Okay, which one of these is the duplicate? Mask split miss points. Okay. Then we're going to delete this one since we know that we already have another piece there. And not quite sure how I managed to do this, but okay. So one of them's gotta go. So we'll get rid of this one. Delete. Alright. Problem solved. Just gonna go back through, double check. Okay. Alright. Same thing here. We're just gonna move this around. Down a mesh. We're gonna come back over this with the brush on each one of these to kind of fill out some of this stuff. So right now I just want to kind of get the main rhythms, so to speak. Pull this inward. And then let's work on this. It's okay if some of it kind of like falls apart a little bit. That's okay. All right. So let's figure this out real quick. All right. So we're going to fashion this as though some of this were held together with some sort of band. Okay, kind of like the reference that I'm looking at. So I'm gonna move the hair in like that. And then we'll fashion something. Remesh. We'll add some volume here in a moment. All right. I think that'll be okay. So I'm going to use a clay tubes brush. And sometimes I like to work with the wireframe on. We got a Pomeranian that is hyper annoying. Barks at everything. All right. Sometimes I like to use the wireframe to kind of help me see the shape of things sometimes. Of course, the other way that we could go is just work with our lighting. Let me go ahead and save this while I'm at it. So what I want to do is just get some information in here. Add some volume, get some shapes. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not getting granular with this. We're just adding some information in here. Might even push it in a little bit. Think about how the hair is going to bunch up against itself. Okay. And then all this is coming down to here. And let me check my brush. Make sure backface masking is on. The reason we want to do that is because if we don't have it on, it'll start pulling geometry on the back end through, and it'll just make a huge mess. We'll end up having to go back and clean up later. So might as well check it now. Give ourselves a bit of a remesh. Okay. Now we can come in with the, say, a Damien standard. Kind of help ourselves out a little bit. Let me turn my stroke down. Turn my intensity up. Just to kind of inform some of these shapes. You can punch it in. Pull it out a little bit. All we're doing is just finding shape. But I'm not going to get too carried away with this because a lot of this is going to be referenced, but we might be able to utilize it as well in the final. Got a helicopter flying overhead. Okay. All right. Spend enough time on that. Let's move on to the next one. Same thing, clay tubes. Let's we're going to do a split hidden. All right. Do a quick Dynamesh. Sometimes if the geometry is kind of acting funky, you just need to change it up a little bit, remesh it, whatever you got to do. Just trying to add some waviness to the hair. Come back through and smooth it down. Changing your smooth intensity will really help not to destroy the work that you do. All right. I'll come back over with the Damien standard. fix that intensity. Do a quick remesh. Go back at it. Okay. And I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. Clay tubes. Remesh. Debian standard. I'm going to try to pull some of this outward. There we go. And our geometry is low enough that you might not be able to get a whole lot of dexterity into it, or fidelity, rather. Just know the higher the fidelity, the higher intensity that you're going to have to plug into it. Now, I don't want to go through and do a whole bunch of sculpting on this right now. I think we'll be fine with that one. And and this stuff up here is not even going to be seen anyway, so I really don't need to put a ton of thought into that. Okay. All right. I'm going to move this into place, and then we're about to hop over into building a hairbrush. Different sort of hairbrush. Okay. All right. So now that we've got this going, I suppose that maybe we should deal with this too. Sometimes you just got to go and just pull things around. Bigger movements are going to read better. Okay. hairbrush. So save this real quick, and we're going to build our little hairbrush. Save. All right. So here's how we're going to do this. We're going to grab a cylinder. And we're going to make it Polymesh 3D. Now, there's a couple ways I can do this. Let's go ahead and initialize it, turn into this type of cylinder. Because they'll probably play a little bit better for us. We use much transpose. Right now, it's not super important as to how tall this thing is, but I do want you know what? We're going to go back to a regular cylinder. Sometimes you just have to do that. But when we initialize it, we're going to bust this down significantly. So I'm going to say I only want 8 sides, or maybe 12. 12 might be a little bit better. Okay. And then we're going to do 3. There we go. And this is going to make sense here in a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to make a an IMM curve brush, tripart brush. If you're not familiar with what that is, I'll explain it to you here in a moment. First, what we're going to do, we got to make sure that we got a Polymesh 3D. And what we're going to do is we're just going to grab some vertices and we're going to move them around. I want to invert my mask. I do this professionally and I still make all these kinds of mistakes. So if I can do it, so can you. Okay. What I'm trying to do is to make some kind of irregular hair shape. And you can make several of these if you want to. I'm only going to make one. All right. I'm going to squish it. And then, what are we going to do? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and choose our Z modeler, BZM. And I'm going to inset a flat island. Maybe not. You know, we don't even gotta worry about that. All this stuff is gonna get dynameshed anyway. So even if this does get crunchy, I'm fine with that. So if I do dynamic subdivision, let's do yes. You can see it's got a little bit of waviness to it, but I need it to be a little bit more. So you have two choices here. You can either sit there and sculpt every single hair strand. Or you can take a moment and build yourself a little tool like this and help yourself out. And hopefully, always yes. Hopefully this will help us a little bit to inform some shapes. So I'm going to grab, let me just, when you're subdividing, you really got to exaggerate some of these shapes. Especially on something that's so tiny. Let me move this one inward. Okay. I think that's it. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to break this up. So we got one poly group right now. I'm going to remove this. Control W on the keyboard. Remove that one. Control W on the keyboard. Now I have 3 poly groups. And we need to be able to create a brush that allows us to use this as a curve and work nicely. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and we're going to unweld groups borders. Now it's going to reorganize those poly groups, but what you'll see now is that if I were to do a dynamic subdivision, now all those vertices are no longer connected, and we need this. So now that we have this, we're going to go over to our brush palette. Let me go ahead and come on. Let me dock it over here. And we're going to come down to our modifiers. Is it modifiers? I'm losing it. Modifiers. Oh, yes. So we need to come over to our stroke palette as well. Okay. So we have to turn curve mode on. So we're going to go curve mode. And now that we've done that, now you see that this modifier panel, triparts, is now activated. Okay. So we have to create a brush. So we're going to go brush, create, insert mesh. And we're going to make a new one. And before I actually save the brush, let me go make some adjustments here. So it turned off curve mode, so let me go here and do this. Turn it back on. So back up a sec. Once you've gone through and unwelded those borders, then you need to go through and make an IMM curve brush. So you need to go create IMM brush. That's what you got to do. Sorry if I'm making this super confusing unnecessarily. So once you have that, then you will turn on curve mode like we did up here. Curve mode under the stroke palette. And then we will come back down to the brush modifier. Make sure that triparts is on. Okay? It should come on by default. But won't be on by default is whether or not the points are welded. So if I try and draw this out, now I've got all this going on, but none of the points are welded. Okay? Now you might think, well, couldn't you just left it as it was? Not really. It doesn't work that way. Um, Now that I've got this going, you can see if I've turned on weld points, now it works quite nicely. Now you can play around with this max bend angle. You can tell it to stretch if you want it to. It's one way to handle it. But really, for our purposes right here, we're kind of done with this. You can play around with this a little bit if you want to adjust the tilt. We can even affect how high off of the surface that it sits. So let's see, our curve depth. I think I might want to bring this down because it'll help it sit into the surface a little bit. And since we're going over a reference point, that will probably help us out quite nicely. So I'm going to leave it there for now, and then we'll come back to this. So I'm going to go, let's save this brush. I probably already have one. Maybe not here. I'm going to go IMM hair curve. Okay. So now that I have this, we're going to grab a piece of geometry. I'm going to go append, and I want to grab a plane 3D, and we're going to solo this, and we're going to draw out some hair strands. I'm going to change our brush size, and right now it doesn't really look like much, right? But what else can we do? We can go back up to our stroke palette, go to our curve modifiers. We'll turn on size. I'm going to flip vertically here. I'm going to bring this down a little bit, bring this up a little bit. Not going to go all the way down to a point. And now let's see how this plays. Now we've got a little bit of a hair curve. If we turn on dynamic subdivisions, we've got some interesting shapes happening here. Now, I had mentioned the depth, so let's back up a little bit and adjust the depth. Okay. So that's working nicely. I want to make sure that my lazy mouse isn't, well, it wasn't even on, but let's see. Nice. So now I've got something going on, and we can use this along with our curved tube snap. Okay, so that's a feature that already exists inside of ZBrush, or a brush that already exists. So I recommend trying it out. So I just clicked that over there, and to get rid of that curve, I just held Alt and clicked off to the side. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw out a series of these curves. And my goal is to kind of create some hair strands, and we'll move them around. And I'm just going to use my move brush BMT. So move topological, and I want to do an auto groups under polygroups, subtool, split hidden. what I'm going to do here is just kind of move these around in 3D space. Kind of help them to overlap one another. Again, just like before, don't get too precious with this kind of stuff, because one, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time. Two, this is all going to get dynameshed anyway. And I'm going to be printing this on a, I don't know how large the sculpture is going to be, but a single strand of hair is not going to be worth. I'm not saying don't take time on it, but what I am saying, when you're managing a project, a large project, basically, you're sculpting a person, and if you're sculpting a person, you got to be mindful of your time, because that is always limited, and you want to make the best of it as you can. Now, right now I'm using Move Topological, and that allows me to move these pieces individually. But then once I kind of have things in place where I think I want them, then I'm going to switch over to the regular move brush, because then I can move the whole piece, right? And really get something going here. So I'm going to move that. It's not really what I want to do there. Now, something I could have done to help save myself some time is maybe perhaps have duplicated that. We'll do that on the next go round. All right. Next round. I'm going to grab my hair curve. Maybe not that. Alternate the sizes. Okay. So something else I'm going to introduce now is the curve to snap. Okay, so it operates basically the same way. Right? Let's check our curve modifier on this one. Modifier. Let's bring this up just a little bit. Ooh. That actually doesn't look too bad. I probably could have gone with that from the beginning. what we're doing is creating pieces that we can plug in. Now, I'm not too crazy about that there. In fact, let's just delete that. We're going to go geometry, delete hidden. Okay. Go lazy radius. There we go. It's probably easier to move them around after the fact instead of overlapping them. You might find that to be the case. Might be a little too large. Okay. That worked out nicely. Okay. So I'm gonna split off this plane and go back to our move brush like we did before. Move. Use a transpose line to make large movements. You can even use the transpose line to do some bending. You can use it like that. Hold Alt, click in this center circle. It will deform this a bit though. Just be mindful. Alright. We're going to do move topological. And then we're just going to start moving some of these around. Try to create a little bit of overlap. This is one of those things you gotta take your time, you know. And of course, there are some other things we can do to help ourselves out too. So I'm gonna finish working on this, and then we're gonna get back to the actual main sculpture, and we'll start plugging some of this stuff in. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right. Maybe let's move these around. Okay. I'm going to save this as a project. So if we ever have to come back to it, isn't lost forever. And I may end up throwing this up on my art station. For download, if anyone wants to mess with it. I'm not going to jump into that today, but it is a possibility. All right. So let's turn off solo, and now we're going to go through and we're going to append that hair tool that we were just messing with, okay? And we'll just use our gizmo and try and put this in a proper place. A little bit long, that's all right. We're just gonna plug it in. If it deforms, that's okay. Go use our inflate brush, bring a lot of that stuff back, just like that. See? Now, I'm just going to remove that. Sometimes you just have to, you got to call it, right? So let's see. Where is my curved tube snap? There we are. So yeah, if you're drawing things out, and you have to stop somewhere, if you hover off towards the end, it'll give you an option to keep going. All right. Okay. Not crazy about this area right here, but it'll be all right. And so if you ever run into these situations, turn on transparency, and then of course wait for ZBrush to save. And then it shouldn't pick up on the geometry there. There we go. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to the next piece. Yeah, I probably should have just started with this one here. But the nice thing is that you do have that option, right? So that's the thing with this work is, like, especially with work. Um, I work for a company. We make big sculptural pieces for splash pads for all kinds of installations, and they'll come to me with a custom piece, and a lot of times I only have maybe I don't know, I have a day to turn around a concept, and sometimes I have longer, but when you're working in these arenas, you got to know whenever to just cut your losses on something, like, especially in 3D. There's 20,000 different ways to do a thing, and not all of them are the most efficient. And so it's hard sometimes to know when to stop. I'm better at it now than I used to be, but sometimes you seriously just got to cut your losses, because if you're trying something and it's just taking time that it really shouldn't, you need to know when to cut that off, really, because especially if you're doing this for work, time is money, and you only have so much of it. So you have to spend it wisely. Ah, you can edit that distance. I never do. Maybe I should start doing that. Maybe I can make my life easier. It's funny how you get set into certain ways of working, and it's just like, I'll put up with some things longer than I'll put up with others, just because if I jump off to another tangent, it might take me a while to get back. That's half the reason why I kind of stick with the ways of working that I currently have. But with the way that things are going nowadays, especially with AI and all that, you're going to have to adapt anyway. It's kind of part of the reason why I started this channel. And another, to be honest, I'm not really concerned about the AI thing. I mean, the reality is, if it's coming to take our jobs, then that's going to happen regardless. Doesn't matter what any of us think about it in the first place. So we can squawk about it or try and make the best of it as we can. I mean, I do think the way that they implemented some of those things were wrong, and that's the way that they do things. They do a bunch of stuff and then ask for forgiveness later. And it's like, well, you kind of screwed over a whole bunch of people, and now you're only doing something about it because you got caught, and that's not okay. Um, so I understand the sentiments from the art community, and I've talked about this before on past videos. Um, but that's my sentiment about it is that um, I don't think that any of us are as original as we like to think that we are. We're all referencing the world around us when we make things. I don't care who you are, what you're making. Anything that you make is influenced by something that wasn't you, someone or something. Um, and, particularly whenever it comes to art, none of us created the world around us. So who are we to sit around and act indignant? That's just how I think about it, I guess. Where was I? Yeah, so I don't think that anyone's. I mean, I think there are things that we bring into, or things that we do with the things around us that are certainly unique. Um, but I'm not sold on that. Like, I don't see how what we're referencing, if we're referencing things that are around us, how are we able to stand there and act indignant that something that's just doing it better than we are able to, simply because we just don't have the ability to go that fast. Is it fair? No. Um, but that's just my thought about it. If somebody wants to come after me with pitchforks and knives, please don't. All right. Now a lot of this isn't going to be seen anyway. I don't know why I'm fussing with it. Let's see. How much is this going to be covered? Yeah. So yeah, we're going to keep going with this. This is going to take some time. I've already been at this, an hour? Probably longer than that. Almost an hour and a half. And that's just how it goes. So we're going to keep going with this. I'm probably going to hop offline here in a moment. And we'll keep working at this, keep working at it until we have something finished. And hopefully by the end of the month. Probably before then, but hopefully we'll get to something that we can print pretty soon. But I don't want to rush it. I want to take my time. And before I hop off here, I'm fascinated by the subject matter. I'm fascinated by the story of Jesus. I'm fascinated by who he is. Absolutely fascinated by the topic of the Shroud of Turin. I, I never really paid much attention to that kind of stuff until, I don't know, the past few years, I suppose. Um, I grew up in church and everything like that, but none of it really ever meant much to me. And I'm not going to sit here and preach or anything like that. I'm just going to share my perspective. Um, there is absolutely no denying that Jesus Christ lived and died, was crucified. The question that people have to ask themselves is he who he said that he was? Did the guy actually rise from the dead? That's the question. Because if that didn't happen, nothing else matters anyway. If that didn't happen, all the people that are trying to swindle you into giving up 10% of your earnings to them so that they can go preach the name and preach in his name and all that stuff. I know that's not everybody, but I have a severe problem with people that use religion as a means to swindle people out of money. It irks me so freaking bad. Anyway, the shroud is something that I picked up or I started looking into, I don't know, probably within the past 2 or 3 years, probably 2 years. And I started watching some documentaries, and I'd heard about it, but I never like really dug into it. And the more that I've dug into it, the more fascinated I've gotten with it. The thing is, nobody can explain how the image got on that piece of linen. Outside of like some astronomical burst of energy that we don't have the ability to recreate. And I don't know. I mean, me personally, I am absolutely convinced. I'm beyond convinced that it. Who else could it be on that image? Who else would it be? I mean, who else fits those the description, right? And why does it matter? Like people, I was listening to an interview the other day between oh between Michael Knowles and another guy. I can't remember his name. But they were sitting there talking about their experiences with religion and whatnot. And he had expressed that he grew up in the church and all that. And he loved God and that he was always interested in God. But what really killed it for him was the people, which is a common thing. And he felt like Christians were arrogant to tell people that if they don't believe in Jesus, they're going to go to hell. And I mean, I can understand that. I wouldn't feel too nice if somebody was jumping in my face telling me, hey, if you don't repent, you're done for, I don't think that people go about it the best possible way. And if it were me and I were able to say anything about it based on what I understand is, look, I think that every religion out there uh, attempts to is an attempt to find God. Some people think that God is within themselves. I disagree. I think that we're all trying to better ourselves, and they're all trying to live to a better standard. And the question though is, for me, like, what is the point? Like, why would you live to a higher standard? What is that based on? And of course, my belief is that morality isn't something that just evolved. I don't think that you can evolve morality, uh, especially since it has a tendency to devolve more often than not. But why Jesus? Like, what's the difference between Christianity and Hinduism and Islam and all these other religions? Well, the difference is that, and you can go listen to the Zeitgeist and everything. There are plenty of other cultures that have talked about a rising, a death and a rising and things like that. But the difference between all those religions and Christianity, particularly with regard to Christ, is that none of them solve the equation about, okay, if there is a problem with morality, and if there is a God and He is perfect, he would by definition have to be perfect, and there would be no way for us to be able to live up to His standard. So we would all be kind of freaking screwed in the first place, right? And the difference between Christianity and every other religion is that God Himself understood that situation, and in order to have mercy on His creation, He chose to step into His creation and pay the penalty that was required for sin. That's the difference. And whenever people talk about repentance, they get it wrong. The vast majority of the time, they talk about, oh, you gotta stop all your bad deeds, and I mean, you do. I mean, I think that if you truly understand where forgiveness, then you won't want to do the things that you've been doing in the first place. For one, and then two, it's not about what you did; it's about what God did for you, because there was nothing that you could offer to Him. What are you going to offer to the Creator of the universe, who has anything and everything that He wants, calls things into being? What are you going to offer to Him? And the other thing that people will say, and I know I'm kind of ranting, but it's my channel. I'll say what I wanna. Just kidding. People will say, well, if God's so loving, then why would He let all these things happen? Well, how can you truly love anything, how can you truly offer any form of love without a free choice? If you truly love somebody, you gotta allow them the opportunity not to love you back, and in so doing, that may actually be a reality that in the case of God, a large majority of his creation chose, you know what, God, I don't want you. Um, and he gives people the choice to either choose him or not choose him. And then those who do choose him, he made a way for them to be together because God's perfect. He can't be around imperfection. And the moment that we choose error, we can no longer stand before God as clean, and it's just not possible. And the purpose of Jesus was to bridge that gap and allow that to happen. He became a sacrifice, paid for the sins of the world, so that we could stand in right relation with the creator of the universe. That's the difference between Christianity and every other religion out there. You know, then there becomes the question, okay, well, how do you know this even happened? Well, it's historically proven that he lived and died on a cross, suffered a horrible, torturous death, and then somehow his tomb wound up empty 3 days later. And it's corroborated by all kinds of writings. It's not, you can't deny it. The information's out there and easily able to be found. So the simple thing is that either it did happen or it didn't. And if it didn't happen, it would make no sense for all those disciples and all those people to suffer the deaths that they suffered. Proclaiming that a man rose from the dead. And it's not like anyone else has a better argument. As though an argument, like if you could be argued into this, perhaps you could be argued out of it. Maybe. I don't know. The way I look at it is I've come to this and I've looked at it over and over and over and over again to the point that I am beyond convinced that this is the true myth. The true myth. The myth that actually was. And you don't have to see it the same way I do. That's okay. I wish you well, and I hope that you're doing all right. And I pray that we can all get along in the end. Anyway, so we did a little sculpting on the hair. I'm going to continue working on this. I got to go walk the dog now. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate the likes, and I'll come up with a schedule sometime soon. Hopefully, I'm really terrible at this stuff. I do this for fun. I'm not here to like be on here and be a influencer or whatever. I want to share my knowledge on things. I do this stuff anyway, so I figured, you know what? Let me just hop on, be live, and share some things that that means something to me, and maybe people will like it. If you don't like it, that's okay. Uh, there's other channels. So, thanks for hanging out. I'll see y'all next time. I'm gonna get a Facebook page going so I can maybe hopefully give you guys a heads up. All right, take care, people.